Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Ultima CSP webinar. As we can see, the session is starting at 10:05, just to allow us time for everybody to join. We expect the session to run for around 15 to 30 minutes today, with myself and another host, our Head of Cloud Pre-Sales. Just quickly to cover the agenda that we'll be covering today, we'll be looking to go over our accreditations with Microsoft, the various billing mechanisms to consume Microsoft Azure, why a customer may choose CSP over the different types of agreements that are available, and how Ultima can actually assist in your journey. So I'm Campbell Adamson, the Azure Success Manager here at Ultima. I've got quite a strong background in public cloud, specifically around Azure, and also on-premise DC infrastructure. My role responsibilities predominantly cover customer onboarding, internal platform management, and training and certifications for our customers and their wider technical teams. Now, I'm also joined by Craig Wordsworth, who I'll hand over for an introduction.
Yes, hi everyone. So my name's Craig Wordsworth. I'm the Head of Cloud Pre-Sales here at Ultima. I have a background in public and private cloud. Been in the industry now for 11.5 to 12 years in a previous role, and initially actually within pre-sales, private cloud aligned, so DC refreshes, backup DR, those kind of things. Before moving into public cloud, again specifically Azure about 6 years ago, but obviously as well as requirements change and trends change and requirements expand, I've moved into AWS as well. So I've got a really good background in solution architecture. My key responsibilities for the role are to define and refine the cloud go-to-market strategy. So anything that you might see from our services are all my responsibility, but key to that really is driving the adoption of public cloud itself. Okay, you just flip me one on, please, Campbell. Yeah, and one thing that I wanted to do before I hand it back over to Campbell is just to kind of give a bit of an overview of where Ultima are today. Now, noting that a lot of you on the call or on the webinar, sorry, will already know who Ultima are, but just worth a bit of a recap. So obviously we've been in industry now for over 30 years, started off in infrastructure design and support effectively. Okay, now of course as industries change, requirements grow, trends change, obviously we've moved with them, and as a result now we've got over 12 years worth of cloud deployment experience in the key cloud providers, Amazon and Azure. On top of that, we also have expanded into things like autonomous workspace and Microsoft 365 migrations. We are experts in licensing, which is really key, especially for me, being able to provide that full end-to-end kind of cost model TCO for a migration for Azure, and being able to actually manage that on an ongoing basis is really important. Not necessarily something that you get across the industry from other partners as well. And we're really proud to show that actually as well, we developed our own internal software that we'll go on to in a few more slides, or in a bit of time, around how we then manage and optimize an environment on behalf of the customer, but being able to then manage it ourselves and make changes and refinements as we go. Okay, now as a result of all of that, you can see here we've got over 10,000 hours of cloud migration experience. Of course, it's ever growing. And we get involved with a multitude of different projects from the beginning of a kind of a migration or planning a migration actually into highly mature customers in the Azure space as well. Okay, I'll hand over to Campbell now just to kind of carry on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that there, Craig. So obviously today's focus is around Microsoft and predominantly the CSP offering. So obviously Craig has touched on sort of the Ultima journey there, but we are obviously a 25-year standing Gold Elite partner with several specialized accreditations, predominantly focusing on Windows and SQL Server workload migrations as a specialty, along with Azure Virtual Desktop environments. Now, what really does make us stand out is with the accreditations that we do have access to funding programs. So you'll notice on the bottom there, we do have AMP, which is the Azure Modernization Migration Program. This is something that we can touch on further, but is essentially a gateway for customers to access funding to be able to move on-premise infrastructure into the cloud at very limited cost, if not fully funded. So it's something that you have access to on the CSP program, and of course, limited partners do have access. Now, to touch on our sort of capabilities a little bit, obviously we do have a very wide and strong, capable technical team, which are able to fit in at pretty much any stage of a customer's journey, specifically following the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. This allows us to fit in with all stages, whether it be a brand new environment from scratch, or whether it may be taking over an existing environment to a sort of managed cloud. Now, on that basis, we obviously do have several assessments that can be ran, whether it be free of charge, whether it be billable assessments. We pretty much have everything to fit every customer's needs. Now, Craig will be able to touch on a couple of the assessments that we do have later on, but predominantly today's focus is actually around the billing mechanisms to do with Azure. So obviously, consuming Azure has to be done under a subscription type. Now, commonly, there are 3 subscription types. Now, this is not including enterprise agreements because they are, of course, going legacy at the moment. So, pay-as-you-go, MCA, and CSP. So, we'll quickly touch on all 3 of these, just so we can give you a little bit of a flavour to what the offerings are. So, of course, first of all, we have pay-as-you-go, and you'll notice under each bubble, we obviously do have some pros and cons. So I'll just pause here for a couple of seconds and just let you sort of absorb some of the information on this slide and just sort of view the pros and cons, and then we'll discuss some of them. Perfect. So the slides will be sent out after the webinar as well, so you will be able to revert back and have a closer look here. But essentially, you can see the main differences, such as support. You'll see on CSP that we do offer free gold support, whilst on pay-as-you-go and MCA, you do need to pay for support. Also, the way things are billed, you'll notice pay-as-you-go is actually on a credit card, whilst MCA and CSP are what we count as structured agreements that are pay on invoice. So the main question, of course, why choose CSP? So the main sort of benefits are going to be the flexible monthly billing. You'll pay us for your Microsoft Azure usage, not Microsoft directly, which means that your payment can obviously fall in terms with your payment terms for the Ultima account. You can have one partner. Now, I have put a star beside one partner because on CSP, you are not limited to working with one partner. But if that's your choice, then you can have a one point of contact, one partner that's going to provide all of your technical and commercial awareness. That can do from billing queries down to, of course, reactive and proactive support on a break fix level as well. There's never going to be a need to speak with Microsoft directly at the customer's choice. So we can fully manage that relationship, or of course the customer can work with Microsoft at choice, but it's nice to be able to have that option there. You'll also get access to our dedicated billing platforms. Now, that's a big difference, of course, if you do consume Azure currently through perhaps a Microsoft customer agreement or a pay-as-you-go subscription. Currently, you only get access to the Azure Cost Management Portal, which we all know isn't quite as granular as we would need sometimes. So, of course, we do actually have our own billing platforms, which customers get access to, which is a lot more granular. You can do things such as order your new subscriptions. If used for the workspace side of things, you can up and down your licenses, as well as customized reports. You'll also get one simple invoice a month. So instead of having multiple invoices coming in with lots and lots of product lines, which quite often finance teams can find pretty difficult to understand, this can end up leading to delays in purchase orders and such. You'll get one simple invoice a month from us, which will state the consumption and the dates of the consumption. Now, this can be more granular if required, but it's to try and make it a little bit easy for you. Of course, spend and cost control services. We're not a partner that just takes a customer on and lets you sort of run into the wild as such. We do like to try control things and keep a cap on spend. With that, we do have several sort of service offerings, which I'll pass across to Craig to be able to discuss sort of the wider pre-sales and technical piece. And he'll be able to sort of discuss how we can actually assist there.
Yeah, thanks, Campbell. Yeah, so there's a couple realistically that I just wanted to go through, to be fair. Only 2 slides, which is good, to be honest, but just to give you a bit of an overview about what we can do and how we can engage with regards to, you know, let's say, for example, you want to start to look to move from MTA, EA, for example, to CSP, or whatever that might be. How do you actually go about doing that? And that is all performed from and planned under a banner called Cloud, or service called Cloud Analyze, effectively. Okay. This is one of a couple of different services that we do offer. Obviously, Cloud Analyze is the main one, free of charge, pre-sales led engagement. Okay, so it's from your perspective, there's no professional services quotes to raise, whatever that might be during this planning process. It's generally a 4-week engagement, and the main reason being for that is we're not just looking for a migration plan, or providing you with a migration plan for CSP at this point. We're trying to provide you actionable insights on your existing environment as well, which is really, really important. Okay. And around that, a lot of that really what that boils down to is kind of 3 key pillars around a health check for the Azure environment. So you can see there: cloud optimization, architecture, and security. Okay, so obviously, notwithstanding, like I said, we would always output like, how would you move to a CSP provider? What would that look like? What are the risks and the pitfalls? What services can migrate? What can't necessarily, would need to be rebuilt? And we can discuss obviously the process around that out of the output. Okay, but it's really important to understand then at that point as well, what's my current monthly bill? What services am I currently using within Azure at this point? You know, where can I make, you know, savings, right sizing, reserved instances? Do I have any orphan resources, for example, that I can make immediate savings for, or things that we can do, you know, as part of that migration to CSP? Okay, so that's a key pillar, of course. Cloud optimization is really, really key pillar, but it's one of a few. Okay, and the secondary to that is they're all around best practice alignment. Now, the interesting thing is when you start to perform a migration to CSP, again, depending on the billing mechanism that you're coming from, it may well be that actually what you'll need to do is rebuild an environment. You'd need to, you know, create a brand new CSP subscription, and as I mentioned, or kind of you know, pointed to earlier, you might need to migrate resources in, you know, maybe rebuild an environment, which actually gives you a great opportunity to understand how well have you architected the existing platform. What are you doing really, really well that you can then replicate? What could you be doing better? And to be frank, there's always things that could be improved upon. I don't think I've ever run this service on behalf of a customer before and not found something in terms of best practice alignments. That's what we're really looking to do there, is making sure that your platform is geared up. You know, it's architected in the right manner. It's secure enough to host live workloads. So no matter where you are, you know, again, on your cloud adoption journey, referencing one of the earlier slides, we can make sure that the platform is ready to go for any new services that you might want to consume within Azure as well. Okay. Now, I mentioned that 4-week engagement, and the main reason it's 4 weeks is because the tooling that we use is IA Cloud, and I'll go on to that in the next slide. It hooks into your environment to provide those cloud optimization stats, figures, recommendations, whatever you want to call them. Okay. Now, it needs 3 weeks or 21 days to be able to then provide accurate results, because of course it's taking live data and obviously analyzing that from the platform itself. So that 4-week engagement is generally waiting a lot, you know, to be fair, in terms of then that tooling to make sure we can we can get those stats accordingly. Okay, but in terms of your time, I think the key thing is that it's a couple of hours worth of work. You know, it's basically from the point of presenting the initial to onboarding to then presenting the results. It's really, really quick for you. You know, there's not a lot of time really needed and effort really needed either. Now, secondly to that, now Campbell's mentioned, you know, we provide gold support as part of CSP, which is effectively break fix support. You know, I have a problem, how do I fix it, etc. as well. But if you are, you know, taking a bit of a step back, a lot of what we hear and the trends basically in the industry today around upskilling, you know, cloud skills, we all know there's a cloud skills shortage, for example, and time again through conversations with other prospective customers or existing customers, you know, regardless of on the journey that they're on, they're always saying, well, actually, no, one thing that I'm struggling with is time, but also then talent, skills, making sure that I can then basically grow into my platform in a supported way, having that safety net of someone else helping me out whilst I can grow. Okay, and this is obviously where managed cloud is aligned to. So I'm not going to go right the way around this wheel, because again, I suppose from my perspective, you expect general things from a managed service provider, you know, ITSM service desk, 24/7 support, you know, management through service delivery, for example, making sure that, you know, we're continuously improving our service, CSI, those kind of things. But I wanted to just highlight a couple of things here, to be fair. I've mentioned IA Cloud a good few times now. Now, IA Cloud is our own internally developed cloud management platform, okay, which is really important to us, to be perfectly honest. So, you know, it underpins everything that we do from a managed cloud perspective. It's got a focus on automation, so not only does it do things like cost management and optimization and monitoring of a platform, and obviously alerting out the back of there through native services within Azure, it also then looks to automate certain features on your behalf. So things like backup, things like patch management, things like malware, you know, anti-malware management, those kind of things, and documentation as well. Generally focusing on reducing your BAU requirements to manage a platform, because of course, regardless of whether you're doing those tasks today or not, there is also then an overhead to performing the tasks that you should be performing at that point. And having those kind of services, and I define them as mundane tasks. Automated is really, really powerful, okay? But the point really is as well, because we manage, and it's our own software, our own SaaS service, and we can change, pivot our strategy as quickly as we need to make sure new services are released, okay? So whether or not, for example, on a roadmap, that's Terraform integration, you know, through automation of then resources, configuration as code, for example, or just a general new feature, I want to start to look at this in a bit more granular detail, we can do that really easily because we're not relying on third-party providers of services to deliver our service as well, okay? And secondly to that, you know, it's all around the service architecture piece. So over to the left, you can see enablement. Upskilling, I mentioned, is a really key thing, and you know, Microsoft are great in this space whereby they provide what we call the Enterprise Skills Initiative. You may have heard of it before. It's all around how they can help you to upskill your team, build roadmaps and training roadmaps, for example, you know, role-based training for specific people, specific groups, generally to get them to upskill through the Microsoft Learn portal. Equally to that, what Microsoft can also do is provide training vouchers against obviously then qualified training partners, so classroom-based training, virtual or otherwise, on top of the on-demand learning, but also then certification vouchers as well, okay? But the point really there, and I'm really strongly, you know, in my you know, I'm a strong believer, sorry, in, you know, classroom-based training, on demand or otherwise, only gets you so far. You know, experience-based training is really, really important. It's how you take the learnings that you've got or you've had, and you basically apply them to the platform that you've got, that you obviously then you're therefore managing in a protected way. And that's where service architecture comes into play, okay? So I mentioned service delivery management. You know, basically you get a non-technical resource aligned to managed cloud. The technical resource that's aligned is a cloud solutions architect, okay? And their whole job there is to service ad hoc queries and requests. How do I do this? What happens if I do that? For example, I want to enable this service, or I've created this architecture. What do you think? Should I do it in a different way? That's where your experience-based learning comes into play, because you can bounce questions and ideas off of then obviously qualified people who are experts in their relevant fields as well. But equally past that, the whole point of their role is to basically gain an understanding of your environment, an understanding then of your roadmap, your strategy, what you're wanting to do, what your plans are, and help you to adopt advanced services within Azure as well. So taking it generally, and most of the time it is, from a VM-centric view into a PaaS view as well. You know, that's a really, really powerful feature that's enabled through the service as well, okay? And lastly, I wanted to highlight, and I mentioned earlier, is licensing support. You know, there are partners, and a lot of partners at that who provide managed cloud who don't get involved with licensing, which basically means they're kind of hindered in terms of then being able to provide you with recommendations around things like hybrid use benefit. You know, how do I make sure that my license agreement covers me for Azure, not just in VMs for, you know, Windows and SQL, for example, and AVD, but also then for PaaS services as well. And the fact that we've got that expertise in house means that we can completely complete that wheel from a managed cloud perspective as well. So if you're interested in any of that, again, please feel free to get in touch, but I will hand back over to Campbell. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful, Craig. I honestly find that stuff really interesting, so I do. Perfect. To be honest, that kind of does wrap up today's session. We did want to keep it sort of brief and snappy, but quite informative at the same time. Hopefully today you've understood a good bit around Ultima if you didn't previously know us, and also around the CSP offering. Now, we will send out a list of the slides and the recording of today's webinar to all the attendants, so you can flick back through at your preference. And as well, if you do have any questions, you can certainly feel free to reach out to myself and Craig directly. Our email addresses were shown in the first slides, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But other than that,